Hi, everyone. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Tuesday after a Monday evening of some wicked severe weather that moved across much of Pennsylvania, but particularly in northeastern Pennsylvania in the near Halstead, which is just to the southwest, I believe, of Binghamton on the New York side. And I mention it because I have a friend of mine, Derek Wood, who, by the way, is a great fisherman. He messaged me last night when these thunderstorms came through around 6, 7 o'clock, said it sounded like a train was coming through and there were trees down everywhere. He's without power. Much of that area is going to be without power for at least 2 or 3 days from what he tells me. He actually sent me a video last night that was from before sunset, and when you take a look at it, it's on my Facebook page. You can look at it there. It looks like it was the middle of the night, and it was amazing. A lot of lightning and thunder. They must have had winds of every bit of 60 or 70 miles an hour, maybe even more. I haven't seen if there was a tornado confirmed. Now, this front has gotten hung up to some degree, and there are some showers offshore, just kind of waiting for this wind to finally shift around. But you can see the temperatures near the coast, generally upper 60s and low 70s from central and southern New Jersey southward, but it's in the 60s and 50s and even the 40s as you go north and west. And we still have some slight marine layer issues for parts of Long Island and southern New England near the coast. But that's going to resolve itself before too long because weather conditions are going to improve. Here's the latest radar, and these storms are well offshore and done. We've got some activity up in northeastern New York and northern New England. Also some precipitation around the Great Lakes as the upper low continues to spin away. A little shower activity down in Florida. Much of where there was severe weather across the Gulf states, lower Mississippi Valley, and so on, and the flooding that occurred over the weekend. That's quieting down for the time being, but there's going to be a flare-up later today in some of those areas, and I'll show you in a second. And then out in the west, which we'll do in greater detail later, not really too much happening here. Even the Pacific Northwest seems to have quieted down just a little bit. Here's our satellite loop this morning, the visible satellite loop, and you can see the cloud line is just to about New York City west. We're seeing some breaks in the cloud cover with some drier air there. Here's the upper low spinning across the Great Lakes, and that is really dominating the circulation across much of the eastern part of the U.S. That front makes its way all the way down into northern Florida. So let's go forward to see what we expect to happen. And I have to tell you that the blocking that's showing up is pretty interesting. So we're going to see improving weather conditions the next 2 days here in the east. And here comes the next weather system for the southern plains. Looks like there could be a severe weather threat across East Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi tomorrow. I'm not so sure there's going to be too much going on today, but tomorrow, and particularly tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night, Arkansas down into Louisiana, Mississippi, there could be some pretty interesting severe weather there. And then that continues into Thursday as you get another deep low pressure center that moves up into northern Arkansas. So that severe weather threat probably pushes its way across the Gulf states. Now that low is going to wind up going up the west side of the Appalachians, and you can see it here. And you know, it seems now that the rain is going to get here a little later. Instead of getting here on Thursday, probably getting here Thursday night during the overnight and raining into at least Friday evening with this low that goes up into western Pennsylvania and the trailing front that swings eastward. Now, over the weekend, and here's where you start to see the block in play. You know what? Let me just get a little tighter. I'm going to get a little more close up, a little closer. Here's where the block starts to come into play because the low just kind of gets stuck there in southeastern Canada and just rotates around. The surface low does, and so does the upper air system. So you'll notice as we work through Saturday and Sunday, there are showers around, and actually even models showing some, I would venture to say that in probably some elevated areas in western Pennsylvania into West Virginia, and on northward there could be some wet snow or some graupel or maybe a little bit of snow and rain. Wouldn't be a surprise. And that threat for showers lasts into early next week. And you'll notice that there's still rotation going on just offshore with this system, because the atmosphere is going to just get completely bottlenecked for at least several days. And that's going to impact the weather going forward. Even once this pulls out, which it takes almost till the end of next week, by the way, we have another system coming in right behind it. This is the problem when you have a blocking pattern. And I'll show you. I was actually kind of astounded yesterday when I saw the GFS and the European and how they handled this, because you just don't see it that often. This is really exceptionally strong for this time of year. And by the way, it's not to say that the models are going to be exactly right with all this in terms of how it plays out, but I want you to, we're going to start. All right, so here's today, according to the GFS. So you already are beginning to see the rising area of pressures across Greenland and the North Atlantic. Here's our trough that's swinging through now. And there's that upper high right through there. You see how it starts to build. And once it builds, it really just goes off the wall in terms of strength. And here it is at this point now. We're at the end of the week. You know, one of my Weather Service friends, Bill Goodman, pointed out yesterday, good rule is when you have a high over low, motion is slow. And this is exactly what you were seeing here. Here's that blocking high, the upper level winds clockwise, of course, pressing down, deep trough here in the eastern part of the United States, ridge out in the Rockies, a trough off the West Coast. And that upper high basically is locking everything in place. It's creating a huge atmospheric bottleneck. You've got this low that's sitting just northwest of the Azores, and that's not going anywhere fast. So this becomes problematic. You can see how it doesn't move. You see how it's just not moving. The upper high is there, and then just gradually pushes down. It forces, on this particular run, that up high is probably a little less strong than what it was yesterday, but you see what it does here along the East Coast? That thing just never gets out of the way. It just drops down off the New England coast and sits there. And then eventually you get another system that comes down in this northern jet and feeds into it. It tries to kick it out, but it literally rotates around it. It just lifts it up, and then the next one kind of dives down. But by then, the block is disappearing across the North Atlantic. So this is now in the middle of the month. So we're looking for a pattern like this to last, I would say, 10 days. I think that's probably going to be the lifespan. That's a fairly long stretch to get into for a blocking pattern. This is I'm going to be curious to see what happens with all this, because one of the differences from yesterday, and I'll go back to yesterday's day run because this really caught my eye yesterday, was the fact that the upper low, let me just rotate it back a little bit. The upper low winds up south, off the east of Virginia, south of Long Island, somewhere here, and it just rotates and sits there. I mean, that's a very strong upper air feature that you see here. That's a pretty nice, decent. That's a fairly powerful vortex to be that far south for this time of year, but you can see how the block impacts the jet across the United States. Here's how these weather systems are: 1, 2, 3, 4, all because of the fact that you've got higher than normal pressures up in the northern latitudes, and that displaces the jet stream further to the south. It's all very interesting. And all the winter weather lovers are crying because they didn't. If you want cold and snow in the Northeast, this is one of the ways you can get it. It's not the only way, but it's one of the ways you can get it. And they wait all day, all winter for a block like this to show up. 2009, 10, and 2010, 11 were particularly blocky for the whole winter, and that created all sorts of storm opportunities along the way, and some of them quite memorable. including, I believe, the Boxing Day blizzard, which I think was in December of '9. After a while, I used to be like an encyclopedia. You could just tell me a storm, and I could tell you everything about it. And you know, getting on in years here, folks. Okay, so let's look at the West and see what's going to be happening out in the western part of the U.S. Because usually, if one side is active, the other side is not. And we'll go backwards just a little bit. So here's that next system for the end of this week for the east, which on Friday is probably going to be a 1 to 2 inch rain producer. That moves out. But for the most part, there'll be a little bit of weather, looks like on Wednesday in the central Rockies, and a little bit going on in the Pacific Northwest. But, on the whole, except for systems that are going to be grazing the coast of the Northwest, I suspect activity here is going to be relatively benign. Early next week, some action in the central Rockies, but it doesn't really do very much. And no signs of any big storms during the next 10 days. And the weather along the West Coast seems to be calming down considerably, which would make sense because of the fact that all the action that is happening is shifting into the east. Okay, we're going to finish off today with the severe weather risk, and I just want to show you there's a marginal risk of severe thunderstorms in southeast Texas and also across Oklahoma and North Texas, in this general area of thunderstorms that runs from Texas on northwestward up through the Rockies and into the Plain States. Other than that, most of this activity that's around the Great Lakes is on the order of shower activity. Also, the threat for some general thunderstorms in Florida. And then for tomorrow, we'll move it forward, and we see a marginal risk of severe weather through most of the eastern half of Texas into southeastern Oklahoma, Arkansas, on up into central Mississippi to Alabama and the Florida Panhandle, with an embedded area of slight risk from southeast Texas across much of Louisiana except the extreme north and the southern third of Mississippi. So that could potentially be another active severe weather day across the central Gulf Coast. All right, folks, have a great Tuesday, and don't forget to check out all the latest on meteorologistjoechaffee.com. Angry Ben has the New York City round on nycweathernow.com. I have more videos that are posted by my Facebook followers on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Chaffee, Cioffi. Just go over there and like it, and you can take a look at all the stuff that's on there. And don't forget, if you're new to my YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button and become a regular here. Appreciate all the commentary that goes on and all the information you share. And it's free to subscribe. Doesn't cost you a dime, and you get notified every time a new video comes up. Have a great day.